viewers, how important is it to be educated in how to be a husband, how to be a wife? Because we're at an all-time high for divorce.
Things. A lot of people's like, oh, you don't need to, just watch your parents. I've heard you say that. But regardless, at the end of the day...
And I disagreed.
Hold on.
At the end of the day,
Not my first attack.
you know, yeah, exactly. I told you, I always get you walled up.
Is what they want the right thing for a long-lasting marriage?
A lot of the times, no.
Then you said the little dig about the parents not being as smart because we're smarter than the older generation. But our marriages now
You're
are still
very
failing.
binary thinking. I'm just talking in certain things.
They didn't really pay attention to bringing us up as one day you will be a husband, one day you'll be a father.
Yeah.
So these behavior games, are we supposed to play these before marriage to find the spouse? How are we supposed to understand these? No. Let me understand it. She's made a point.
Won't want it because they don't want the community to be seen as having another daughter that's divorced, because that's more important than the fact that she's been.
What do women want? Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome to another episode of AAA Talks with your host Muaz
Safe.
And Yahya.
And today we have a special guest, Sister
Fahima.
Okay, Fahima has joined us today. I'll get right into it. We have been bashed and attacked online, Fahima, by a lot of sisters who said we are not qualified to talk about what women want. We spoke about the struggles in the past of why are young Muslims single? Why are older Muslims still single? What are the qualities that a woman should go for in a husband and vice versa? And a lot of women have spoken and said, who gave 3 microphones to 3 men? You know,
Licensed podcast.
Yeah. Remove the microphone. Someone take those microphones away. So we thought we would go ahead and get you not just a sister, but an expert, very highly qualified. I'm going to go through some of her credentials. This is a long list, so if I go through all of it, the episode might just be over. But BSc qualification, degree in business management, qualified in NLP, so certified NLP practitioner.
What's NLP?
Linguistic programming.
Okay.
Who did you do it under? Was it?
Can I go through the rest, please?
Go.
Yeah, because there's a lot here.
No, it's very exciting, actually. Yeah.
So certified in mindfulness, positive psychology, relationship and couples coaching, cognitive behavior therapy, which is known as CBT. Yeah. Attended the neuroscience of change and confidence program. It's amazing. You studied in King's College.
Yeah.
King's College. You've got a lot of media involvement, TV producer and presenter. You hosted Single Muslim Live on British Muslim TV as a relationship coach. You've made appearances on Talk TV, the Trisha Goddard Show, Good Morning Britain, GB News, BBC World News, attacking a lot of right-wing fascists in the political party in that spectrum. This will be a lot more lighthearted than that. But Fahima, thanks for coming on, of course. Really appreciate that. What do women want is going to be the episode title, all right? So maybe let's just start with what we've been criticized a lot is we don't know what women want in a husband. So how could you summarize that?
Well, there's no cookie cutter template, firstly. I think there's a lot of factors that needs to be considered when you're thinking about what women want. There are different types of women, further to the fact that whether they are of a certain age, first-time marriage, second-time marriage, whether or not they come from a particular education background, socio-economic background, their sort of level of spirituality, sort of their experience, all of that matters. And I think there's nothing wrong in men discussing what women want, because I think a lot of women need to understand what men think and feel in order to actually combat and also counter challenge and understand. So I really think, those sort of comments, again, a lot of people don't even agree with me a lot of the times, even women especially, because they don't come from a place of professionalism where I've coached around the world, probably over thousands of people. Wow. And listening to many stories. And a lot of people will get triggered because I will be a reflection on what they think and feel and hold them accountable. So what women want, I think it depends a lot of the times on on their actual sort of like, experience, background. And I really do think that we do miss the fact of social economic background, because a lot of men complain as well. And I'm like, well, you're in your pool, find your pool and search within that pool. And that's how it works. There's no such thing as a right or wrong as to what women want. It just depends where they're coming from.
Wouldn't you say there's a general normality on what people actually want? There's always some women that want A, B, and C. And for instance, whilst growing up, whilst seeing things and social media as well, the reality is they do want a successful man. They always coin the phrase a real man. And that's a whole discussion in and of itself. And, things like being handsome or good looking or, good character, good deen, things like that. So those things are normalities, if you like that. Most women, especially that aren't divorced or experienced in life at a later age, but their first marriage and things like that, different situations in life dictate different things. So from the start...
Absolutely. I think from psychology, they do say generally that women will look for someone of an equivalent or higher status, whereas men, it's kind of lower or it doesn't matter. And for their ego, probably lower is better. Or what they can handle. That's what
there was a lot of
consensus.
discussion online on that. Yeah. There was, I think.
So that is the consensus. And obviously, even though they want someone who is probably financially okay and, brought up in a particular sort of religious background or whatever it is, I do feel that now dynamics have changed. Women have evolved so much. We have to also understand they're not looking for those specific providers and protectors because they don't have it. It's because they want them to match them at least. Okay? And that's how I hear a lot of people speaking. Whatever I'm saying right now, it's not my personal opinion of what I might choose. That's something I will never share. But I will talk from what I hear a lot of women are saying. Okay? Because I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think there's various factors, and I think when we're trying to box it, that's when there's a problem.
Okay.
But do you feel like, people's choices nowadays are more surface level?
Yes.
Very surface level, like they just look at looks.
Yeah.
Even when they think they match in education-wise, it doesn't mean that they actually match in every kind of way. So are they actually surface level?
To an extent, but I think a lot of the new generation now, with everything that they're exposed to, people do understand that they want that level of emotional intelligence, for example, in a man. There are women that are understanding that they need someone who is empathetic, who understands how they feel, for example. So there is, again,
but that's a layer after they found some sort of chemistry and attraction. A lot of the, let's be real, a lot of the dating scene or marriage scene is done online now. And the first thing they see is a picture. And they're swiping left or right or however it is. And they're not going to go for emotional intelligence when the guy looks like...
If it's a long-lasting, yes. Because the actual attraction initially may be that look, may be the fact that they have a certain job. But for it to actually last, that's why it's not lasting, is because they are looking for much more and much deeper. Okay?
So you made a good point. It's not
So
lasting
it's
because
not
they're only
lasting.
looking for shallow.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And people have said, even men have said, oh, this girl's absolutely gorgeous, but so no personality, absolutely boring. So it's both ways.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So people are looking for deeper. And I think nowadays, because they're not just looking for something just surface, they do have much more information and education with regards to what's required to maintain in a marriage. So people are having to actually dig deeper. And one point, you could say that's a good thing. On the other hand, it's like we're not working on ourselves. We don't have that self-development. And that's why we're not actually getting where we need to with ourselves or each other.
I agree. Here's a question. Do women, and men to some extent, do they know what they want? Is what they want the right thing for a long-lasting marriage?
A lot of the times, no. When they come to me and I put them through these kind of psychological tests, and I do go through a lot of things, a lot of people's like, oh, you don't need to, just watch your parents. I've heard you say that. But regardless, at the end of the day...
And I disagreed.
Hold on.
At the end of the day,
Got my first attack.
yeah, exactly. I told you, I was just getting you warmed up. But at the end of the day, we are living in a certain sort of life, especially in the West, where people are smarter and we are understanding each other more. Personalities are important to sort of match with regards to...
Are they actually smarter? Like if their
Yes, they
marriages don't
are.
last 1 year or 2 years, and the older generation lasted decades and decades.
Well, that's what I'm talking. I'm talking about the
So
ones that
we're
are
talking about
actually
marriage.
searching, that are actually looking, and they actually are going to these courses, and they actually are searching to understand each other through outside, looking at their families and parents. They do actually see each other differently, and I think it's a lot to do with professionals. I have a lot of professionals come to me that are either doctors, and especially from the Iraqi community or Arabs or whatever it may be, and they're like really good when it comes to their professional sort of setting, but not necessarily in their marriage. And their parents will contact me and say, look, can we do some couple coaching before they actually get together, because they're like wanting to call it off. And then when I question them, then I sort of help them understand what is it that they do want, how is it going to relate in reality and faith and the practical days of life, and taking them through certain things that they understand about themselves. Because a lot of the times you think that what you're looking for in a marriage is a contract like a business, and to an extent it is. But again, you have to research as to what is it that you are within yourself and the other person, because a marriage is about consideration of the other. Okay? And one scholar did mention saying that a marriage is actually translated as a shared struggle. So I make them understand that it's not like the Hollywood, Bollywood that you think and know. It is actually a shared struggle. So you need to understand what that means for each other. What is the compromise? What is your foundation? What is your actual structure of what you look like
But the
in
shared
future?
struggle, that's a good point. But that wouldn't come from just courses, with it. The nature of an individual would dictate that sort of understanding and compromise.
Not everyone. No, not everyone. Unfortunately, you think
There was
that
an
people
interesting
know.
study actually in America where they found that divorce rates for those with degrees were higher than those without.
Look,
and
having
because
a
they used to
degree-
dispute,
No, I don't.
Having
We're
a
not talking about
degree-
education.
We're not talking about
Yeah.
education. We're
because they
talking
used to
about
dispute more.
We're
right?
talking about understanding conflict. We're understanding, the fact that how different personalities match and not. That's where couples coaching and counseling comes in. This is not just general education. Like I said, people with the highest education don't have the best relationships.
No,
Yeah.
but yes, I understand that. But you said we're smarter now as individuals, going there, and then you said the little dig about the parents not being as smart because we're smarter than the older generation. But our marriages now are
You're
still
very
failing.
binary thinking. I'm just talking in certain things. It's not for everything. Like I said, there's not a template. In certain situations, we should look at our parents because there was some sort of like understanding, patience, and a bit of tolerance. But then to the other extent, when you look at people that were tolerating things that is actually extreme, whether it's violence, whether it's the toxicity in a marriage, putting up with things which is not acceptable even Islamically. So I think you have to measure it accordingly, and it is a case-by-case study. I think we generalize, distort, and delete information a lot, and that's what we learn in psychology. So at the end of the day, saying these things, it doesn't apply to everyone. Everyone listening to me, they'll be taking their own scenario and say, that doesn't apply. Someone else will be like, yeah, that's applying.
Yeah.
So, that's how it works.
Oh, yeah. And I think generally we do look at our parents' generation as like the perfect generation because we define it by decades and decades of marriage. But it's totally different. We can never compare with them because they've come from, well, I look at my parents or, a lot of people I know and their parents, they came from back home. There was a proper struggle. We're living in comfort. We're living in luxury right now, but they were really struggling. There was that shared struggle that you spoke about. And it was almost like we're in survival mode. Let's do this and let's do this right. And their parents probably brought them up in a way that was very traditional and they just simply copied the previous template. And then they brought us up here in a totally different environment. No longer in Egypt or Somalia or Bangladesh or wherever. And I feel like there were a lot of mistakes along the way with bringing us up. I mean, we sit here and we talk about, we criticize women today because of how ungrateful they are and what they're, all of the problems that they have. And a lot of people would say, especially from the red pill community, they'll blame the whole society. Everything wrong is on women and what they've become. And then you've got others that would say, well, actually, women, the way they're acting is only a reaction to the way men are acting. And the men haven't stepped up lately, and so women have. But I've got a bit of a different take. I think that the parents, the previous generation, kind of missed something. I think when they brought us up, they didn't really pay attention to bringing us up as one day you will be a husband, one day you'll be a father.
Yeah.
You know, one day you'll be a mother, one day you'll be a wife. I think they were so consumed by this new environment when they came here that things kind of... would you agree with that?
I think environment really matters. What you just said as well, the fact that they were just there on survival mode. So then even in any marriage, if you're just there on survival, you're not going to be worrying about trivial things. The more comfortable you are, that's where even happiness comes in. How do you measure happiness? A lot of the times they measured happiness between people in Bangladesh and LA is very similar, because the ones in Bangladesh are not really having the sort of like luxuries. So they're actually happy and grateful with the little things they have. Whereas in California, when they have everything, their happiness level is not that great.
Yeah.
So it depends how you look on those studies as well and how people are measured. Now, when we actually have everything, we have to understand the human mind and behavior. We are humans that adapt very easily, and we get very complacent, and we actually get used to things without the gratefulness. And that's where your Islam comes in there to constantly remind you, to help you to understand where you're at, where you should be, and what's really important. If you're just going to live in this world just with, you know, looking at this kind of, you know, dunya and, you know, what's around us, and, you know, whether it's happiness or not in terms of like material things, then again, you know, it's depends on what level of your soul, your nafs is. And that's how people operate. And what level? Is it the lower level desires or the higher level? So that's what it comes down to. And for me, everything, even if I might not look the most religious, it comes from all of that. And it comes from the fact that you understanding your own soul, your own practice, your own spirituality, and that's how you make your choices and decisions. And if you yourself are hard on yourself, then you match that and you attract that, and you also be looking for that. And that's how it works. And that's really it in a nutshell. So when it comes to, yes, we are people that have certain, you know, genes, biology that makes a difference. When a mum gives birth, you know, her genes do actually carry forward. It's like, you know, in science, it shows that, you know, how your children are going to be. If she's like got the depressed and, you know, sort of cortisol levels that are stressed while she's, you know, in pregnancy and birth, that actually transfers into the child. People don't realize
Like
that.
the trauma.
Yes.
Trauma could be passed.
It can be passed. But then obviously you work on that as an adult, right?
Yeah.
And your environment also matters. So that's why all of these things, when people talk, they're just coming from their own perspective, their own triggers, unhealed wounds, and unhealed and resolved problems. Whereas I'm talking on a very general basis, but at the same time, I'm trying to tackle different scenarios. And it won't apply to everyone, and not everyone is going to agree. And that should be the way, because not everyone is going through the same things.
Yeah.
And they're not at different stages and ages. When it comes to our parents, even when you look at history or anything like that, we always say, it was always better before. But was it better before when we didn't have, you know, places to go to, scholars that we can actually reach, people that we can actually talk to directly in the mosques, where now we can. Exactly. We can send messages, you know, private, confidential, things that are really controversial in subject and topic that we can actually answer. So it should be easier now, but why isn't it? What is lacking? That's the question.
That's a good question. I want to take it back to the importance of, well, this is something I was stressing about in our previous episodes. How important is it to be educated in how to be a husband, how to be a wife? Because we're at an all-time high for divorce, surely, right? I mean, I just made up that stat, but it surely is. We are surely at an all-time high. In almost every Muslim country, there's extremely high number of divorce, and it's obviously here as well, it's extremely high. Is that a result of a man and woman just getting married together without actually knowing what their rights are, how to be compatible, how to, you know, cope with that whole tug of war struggle? Yeah.
I think so, definitely. Education is obviously even, you know, encouraged in Islam. Knowledge is endless. And I think if you can learn not just academics, but Islamic knowledge, as well as part of that is knowing, and I think the most important thing you said there is your rights. Men and women do not know their rights. That's where people take advantage of it.
It's huge, yeah.
People, you know, manipulate it, things like that. So I think at the end of the day...
So knowing the rights will help keep the marriage together?
It's part of it, definitely. It's part of it. Knowing that Because a lot of the times, I think in the Muslim community, unfortunately, with certain backgrounds especially, it is not Islam that's being followed, it's culture. And that's where the problem is. And that's got nothing to do with Islamic rights. You go in, I've been into certain, for example, Pakistani homes and things like that, and they follow their tradition more than anything. And that's got nothing to do with it. And they're pressured and they're stressed because it has to be the tradition that needs to be in conformance with. When I'm like, it's got nothing to do with the fact that, you know, we just have to live the way we have to live. You know, a lot of the times, even I've had clients come to me saying, you know, I can't go to my parent and say that I'm going to divorce, even though my husband's beating me up, because they're like, no, we can't have a second daughter that's going to be divorced. These are the cases I hear. That's why I'm so passionate about what I speak. And I'm not afraid to say that these are some of the communities that actually do need to sort of work on your home, you know, your community first, and then go outside and talk. Because I get the clients that come to me that actually has these kind of issues, and they are professionals, they're working, and because they have brothers, luckily, that girl was taken out of the home, because the parents won't want it, because they don't want the community to be seen as having another daughter that's divorced, because that's more important than the fact that she's been beaten up.
Wow.
And that's
what
the
would you
reality of it.
That was a mic drop moment.
I know. Well,
It's a shame these are so fixed. Sorry, go
you
for
know,
it.
before we get into like the rights of a woman and the rights of a man, what are the things that a man should look for and the things that a woman should look for before marriage?
Wow. Like
That's
I
the
said, if you are
mean-
from a certain economic background, for example, you live in a nice house, your father's provided for you,
Yeah.
and you have, you know, things done for you. Even if the girl's like, I like this boy, you know, he doesn't have to have what my father has,
Yeah.
that marriage won't work because eventually she's not going to be used to it.
Yeah.
Or her parents' involvement, they know that they don't want
So
that
you're
for
saying
their
they
daughter.
should be of similar background in terms of wealth.
It works a lot of the times.
Well,
Doctors marry doctors.
Yeah,
They understand
yeah.
each other's
Doctors
worth
find
ethic.
doctors boring. Some doctors actually look at them like, I don't want to marry a doctor.
I get
Life
that,
is gonna
but
be
the
boring.
educated ones, they have that because if they want their wife to continue working, they understand that kind of way of working.
We have that in the Egyptian community.
Yes.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah, they
doctors-
mix only with their, especially with the Arabs.
Yeah,
You know, I
yeah,
know.
Yeah,
being
especially if the
married to an
woman is a
Iraqi.
doctor.
Yeah.
If a
Yes.
woman is a doctor,
Yes, she'll
it's
marry
kind
a
of
doctor.
unfortunate because her pool of men just completely
Yes,
narrows because the parents are
absolutely.
I
like,
think they can marry engineers as well. Yeah.
I think you
yeah,
got
yeah, they can marry similar status,
Similar
but they will
status.
look for because a doctor would get a doctor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
a
you'll
dentist
understand.
with dentist. Exactly. You go
Yeah.
to the Iraqi community in London, and majority of them were their pharmacists, dentists, doctors. They all seem to have the same sort of, you know, background when it comes to their profession, and their families will only accept that even if the child, you know, the adult grown child is going to be married, to say, no, I don't want that. The parents will, I've seen so many marriages stop, right? Because they're not from the same background, they're not from the same sort of wealth, you know, and that matters. So when even men's like, oh, she's this, I'm like, well, she won't go for you anyway. You're not of that level, so don't complain unless you're on that level.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
She won't go for you, you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if she does, her parents won't allow it.
Yeah.
I've seen so many marriages that have gone to the stage where they got to know each other, they really like each other, gone to the parents, like, no, firstly, they're not the same background, or they're not the same status.
Is that usually with parents of the woman?
Yeah.
Yeah, because when it's the other way around, it's not that rigid.
Like I
is it?
said, in psychology generally, men most likely, you know, wouldn't mind someone, but they still, if they come from a high status background, they're going to want someone also from that because, you know, that sort of like family interaction. Because let's be real, with Muslims, we don't just marry each other, we marry each other's families.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
So
Families marry each other.
at the end of the day, it matters. So when men complain about certain things, I'm like, you on that pool, search in that pool.
Yeah, it's true. It's
I'm
you
harsh.
know,
You have to be, you know, cutthroat about these things.
I agree.
Don't complain.
Because marriage is for life.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but don't complain that this is how it doesn't work. This is how we operate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's not the Islamic way, but this is how we operate.
Yeah, I was speaking to a brother just yesterday,
I
and
disagree,
he
but
is.
I'll tell you, go on.
No,
You could disagree, but that's the reality.
I was speaking to a brother.
Reality, loads of less fortunate, if you like, women who have beauty and things like that end up marrying loads of wealthy people or more academically achieved people. That
Like I
does
said,
happen
for
a
women,
lot.
it's
So
easier.
the
We can-
woman,
we have
she
a bigger
can
pool.
achieve something higher if she wants.
Yeah.
So can the guy.
No, I
You know,
think the point
depending
she was
on their
making-
own worth.
The point she was making was when the woman is at a very high level
Yes.
of social status,
Yes.
Yeah.
Then it's
academic
harder
achievement,
to get a lower.
career.
So the easiest example for that is the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Khadija radiallahu anha was the highest of her time. And she still went for the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi
I
Wasallam.
understand we are
There
Muslims
are-
and we have
yes.
faith, right? And when people talk about that, that's great. But even our own parents don't live by those rules.
Yeah.
And we don't live by that standard and that reality.
Times
Those
have
are
completely
those
changed.
are examples to strive towards, but they're not exactly lived by, unfortunately.
They're not examples that we see
practical,
today.
Yeah, well, they're not examples, and we
Yeah.
can keep using those examples, but that's not the reality.
Yeah.
True.
That's what I'm trying to say, and we need to get with
So
what
a
it
woman
is.
can aim for something higher, but a man
I'm not saying what
can't.
they should and shouldn't. I'm saying that's what they do.
That's what they do.
That's what they do. And like I said, in psychology, regardless of faith, usually women want someone who is of same status, economically, financially, emotionally, mentally, whatever it
Socially.
is, socially, and same or higher. With men, they don't mind lower.
Yeah, but the challenge is for a lot of these sisters is they might want to marry someone on the same level, but they get to the age of 30, 35, 40, and they still can't find that. And then
Yes,
do
that
have,
is happening
and
now.
we do have a lot of sisters that are challenging with those kind of things. So
Are you-
how do you solve that
I mean,
problem?
that is a reality.
That
The
is-
women
that is
the
sometimes
reality.
How do you solve
more
that problem?
academically
Yeah.
achieved,
Yeah,
and they have
100%.
better jobs
Yeah.
now. The
100%.
guys are struggling.
Yeah.
Let's look at London, for instance. A lot of the people are like that. The women sometimes are doctorates, all right? He's only done his bachelor's or even A-levels. And he's gone to do a job or whatever, not. And then, the girls, I think it was 80% of the females are now working compared to 50 years ago. So now they're taking the better jobs in society, like I mentioned once before. So now the guys are left behind, but they still need to get married. What they're going to do, they're going to have to compromise.
There should definitely be a
How
compromise.
do you solve that
It is,
problem?
it is the unfortunate reality because it's almost like your biggest strength as a woman, which is your academic prowess, your career. You've gone to establish amazing things, and well done to you. But all of those advantages end up kind
Being a
of being a
disadvantage.
disadvantage
Yes.
when it comes to.
Not really, because if you look at students and when they meet in college and university. So if they're at the same level, then they'll marry and they'll be there. It's just that they're choosing
But
to
that's not
get
the
those
reality, though.
married.
Okay, yeah, sorry, no, I should have
I got
added.
married when I was like, and I found who I was going to get married to in college. And most people find that. I am divorced after 10 years. And unfortunately, it was like that. But I do still prefer, and I still say that people should look when it's earlier on, and they should get there because, it's easier to even meet people
Okay.
when you are in that mix.
Okay,
You're
that's-
more likely to
True,
actually
but it's more
find-
challenging for the brothers to actually get married at that point.
Yeah, but only
That's what
because
I'm trying to
I
get to,
think
which is-
No, but let's just
Listen,
conclude
when
on
they're
that point.
young, 18 and whatever,
Yeah.
and say up to 25,
Yeah.
then the expectation is a little bit less because then they are much more compromising to say, well, they're working towards this. They're still
Yeah,
half
they're
of that
ambitious,
degree.
they've got
They're
goals.
ambitious. They haven't got the house yet, but they're saving towards it. And they're more likely where the parents and the two people together will work towards something. But when you leave it too late, then the woman has achieved certain things. And if the brother hasn't, then it is harder. And then there's a higher expectation as your age is older.
Yeah,
For men,
that's
more than women.
That's the scenario that I was
And I
painting
think
earlier.
men are actually doing a disservice to themselves by not actually, it's not just the problem that women are, getting educated. Why the hell are they not doing it as well at a certain age and stage and getting where they need to be? Do you understand? If women are doing it, why are they not? Because even the latest economist figures are showing generally men are declining in education and in business, when actually they should be actually striving towards being those protectors, even if it's not an investment banker salary and job, but at least if you're showing something, that is something to work towards. But women are not complaining because they're not actually having men that are working and having the finance. They don't even have that. They don't have the car. They don't have, forget house. They're not even renting or anything. They're still not on even an average level. I'm talking average. That's what women are complaining about.
So what is average then?
I would say someone, like I said, who's working towards something. But these men, some of them are not even working towards it. They're still figuring out, what's my goal next year? Where am I going to work?
At the age
Instead
of 35.
Exactly. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Yeah, there is definitely
There
a
is that
crisis
as well.
with
You
men.
have to
yeah,
put it
'cause
on
that's,
them
I
too.
wanted to, yeah, of course, 100%, definitely. My point was that this woman has achieved so much. It's a bit of a disadvantage when she's 35, for example.
Yeah.
And her pool of men, so her expectations are a lot higher because she's achieved a lot more. But then the unfortunate reality is that the pool has gone very small, and I think on top of that as well, I
Not
think
really,
a lot of,
because she can just marry someone a lot older and more mature with more money.
yeah.
10
But
years,
but
20 years.
How many of them are there?
There's
that-
quite
that-
a few.
that
It's just
aren't
that
married?
women are just choosing still for the younger ones.
Yeah,
When actually
yeah.
the more mature man is probably the more reliable one anyways.
Yeah.
And nowadays, there's a lot of older men that would be willing to, and they want to, get married to younger women.
So you're saying that there's a lot, the expectations are still a bit
Yeah,
high. They need
yeah.
to lower their expectations,
I
or they need to
don't
change
talk
their
about
expectations.
lower. It's more about changing.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. Interesting. There is a bit of a crisis with men, definitely.
Definitely.
I work a lot, and I do a lot of activities and a lot of work with young men, and I would say men in their early 20s. I don't remember being like that 10, 15 years ago.
No, yeah.
I think the world has definitely changed. I think a lot of younger men are unfortunately still very immature. They're not very ambitious,
Emotionally unintelligent.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, that's the thing. A lot of men really didn't have any role models.
do you think it comes down to role models?
100%. I mean, we've been around each other for quite some time.
And you're still not my role model.
I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to get to is, for example, we had to move out of our parents' homes. We had to work. We had to graft to get to where we are at in life in general. But a lot of these young men that we have mentored as well, they're really not challenged by anything. Life is very comfortable for them.
That's what I'm saying. When
life
there's a
is very-
struggle,
yeah.
people
Life is
strive
very-
more.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think so.
And that's the challenge. You'll see someone that's 30 or even
And the
40,
parents are not tough enough
and
as
nothing,
well.
Yeah, and nothing changes, which
Yeah.
is everything is
and
the
they're,
same.
and they're still looking for like quick
Or they-
results.
Yeah.
Like they want to operate life in a microwave.
Yeah.
Just, ding.
Exactly.
And they want their results straight away.
Yeah.
It is a disaster. So what would we asked you what women should look for in a man. Okay, what should a man look for in a woman?
I think it works both ways in a lot of things, to be fair. Having high integrity for me is really important. I think values, we don't talk about values enough. Okay? A person is basically the characteristics of someone is through their values.
Yeah.
And even if people are saying, oh, I want someone religious, it's not about going into the mosque and praying. It's about how is that implemented in their daily life, in between their salah, for example, in their decision making. Those are the things. And that's what I'm saying. When you don't have that kind of education, when you're going to speak to somebody who is going to talk about relationships to sort of, how do I, kind of sort of suss, whether they're ready for marriage, whether I'm ready for marriage, whether we are going to be successful. These are the kind of things that I would do alongside the psychology with the actual Islamic understanding of, what you're looking for in a character, which, a lot of people will put their best person forward, best foot forward at the beginning, have the best character witnesses, have the family members and friends to give the best sort of like, sort of witness, kind of like as to, oh yeah, they're so great, they're so this. But you yourself will have to look in between the lines. That's like how they say, oh, the love language. That is just so basic. When I know, I'm trying to understand what is your nervous system? How is it that you actually cope when you are stressed, when you are in conflict, when you don't get what you want? Now, these are the
How's
kind
an
of
individual
things.
supposed to know that before?
Well, that's why you come to someone like me. You have to understand that because these are the everyday lives of the first year, which is the most challenging. And when I
100%.
give people those kind of education, they're like, wow, this is unbelievable.
But so many people don't know these basic things.
Of course not.
I never knew it. I
No
never
one
knew it,
does.
you know what I mean?
And firstly, if you have a thought like, oh, just learn from our parents and just go along with it. And, and they just tolerate. And believe me, a lot of people who even are married, they're in miserable marriages. That's the other thing people don't. Just because you're married doesn't mean that you're actually happy. In fact, that's actually more of a higher percent of people that are just staying in marriages because they don't want the actual stigma of divorce. And they're staying in it for finance or for the fact that they don't want to get rid of their kids. And I know that for a fact from my clientele. And they're highly, professional, high status, all of that. okay? And they have marriages, which is the most miserable, and they are in it just because of the fact that they want to stay in it,
Stigma, yeah.
not to break that kind of, that sort of, role that they play. And it is a role that they're playing.
True.
And that's it. And that's when you get either the second, third marriages and people saying all of these things, or like the, temporary marriage that they want to go out of it for that reason. So people are also doing a disservice by staying in really miserable marriages or even not working on it. You have to know yourself. Personal development is the most important thing, okay? Our Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, we knew him not just because he was a messenger. He was known as the trustworthy. Why? It's because of the way in which he acted, his character. We don't understand people's character, personalities, or anything like that.
But you can't understand people's character before marriage. You're supposed to discover that after marriage.
No, you
How
can.
are you
You
gonna
can.
No,
You can.
Because
You
one of the
definitely-
ways of understanding character is through, what was the three things? Traveling, doing business transaction,
No.
sleeping.
That
No.
was on how to
That's-
define a friend.
Yeah.
How to define a friend.
No, but
Also character
also
as well.
there are
How
many
you gonna-
psychological sort of distinctions and sort of Myers-Briggs. If you go into that and you find out and figure out the certain traits that you have, you do that as a couple. You do that, when I do my couples coaching and you understand each other. There are certain games, there's certain role plays, and you put
Like
yourself in such
attachment
an
theory, knowing what kind
so
of
many different things from
temperament
your
person you are.
exactly.
So you're
all
supposed to
of
play
these
little
things.
games before marriage to get to know each other.
If you're gonna say it like that,
No,
then
that's what you're
obviously
saying. That's what you're saying, though. That's why I'm
No,
hearing
no,
and
no, that's
understanding.
not what she's saying.
those are developmental.
How are you supposed to find
There's
out?
cards as well. It's called Zawaj cards. My friend made
I
it.
have it.
You have it?
These are
That's
human
excellent, by the
mind
way.
and behavior.
So these behavior
psychology.
games, are we supposed to play these before marriage to find the spouse? How are we supposed to understand
Yeah,
these?
Dave, what
No,
you-
no, no, no. Let me understand it. She's made a point there. She's elaborated on
Say
it.
it's not. Okay, you are putting it that second, but it's not, right?
It's
You're not-
when you are in sort of courting stages and your parents have given the kind of whatever, and you are getting to know each other in the halal way, whatever it
So
may
get
be.
my mum and dad
so
there
you
as well, yeah?
So at the end of the day, you can, and you having some sort of issues as to whether or not you can relate. So there's premarital courses that you go to, so you figure out each other. We're sitting together. I do it over Zoom or face to face, and we go through certain, sessions where we can understand what you are as individuals and for each other. And believe me, it's such an eye-opener. And only when you go through it, just like with counseling, therapy, or anything, then only you understand what it's about. From an outside perspective and someone looking like yourself, it's like when you drive a car, if you have no mirrors, you're going to be kind of blind, really. I'm your review mirror. I'm your reflection. That's how you've got to look at it. It's not a
But
game.
you said about values,
It's not a
right?
game.
And you started off, one of the principles that you said for a good marriage was to understand the values of each
Yes.
other, right?
Yes.
And those values are set by our deen. I'm assuming that's what you mean as well. Or how
It
would you
depends,
how would you
because
determine
everyone is
values? What
different.
values are there? Integrity you mentioned.
There is a
right?
whole list of values that I have, and usually people
Give
look
us a
at
few.
it, whether it's kindness, generosity, being funny, with different people. There's such a
Yeah.
huge list that I have written down, and I'm like, pick what you are, pick what you want to be, pick what you're lacking, pick what you
These
see.
things, my dear sister, you can't find them before marriage. You're not supposed to have that sort of interaction with each other to understand
Well,
whether
people
or
are
not
having
it's-
those kind of
Bro,
interactions.
come on.
Who said
You
they're
can,
not
man.
having this kind
A
of
woman,
interaction? Who
a
said
woman
you
could
shouldn't
easily
have
know
that?
if a man is generous
Exactly.
or stingy.
Easily know that. How, bro? Before marriage, how are you supposed to know?
Of course, you're gonna go out. You're gonna go out with the family.
So-
You're not gonna say, "Hey, would you like a pastry?" You say, "Hey, I've bought all of these pastries."
So we're
Which one?
normalizing
Enjoy your
a
coffee.
couple
Yeah,
of
there's so
years.
many
These
different
there's-
distinctions.
there's
I
so
think with
many.
you, it's more like a cultural thing because
It's not cultural. You said values. We said Islam, and then we go through the correct
But
procedure
even
of how
with Islam,
to
say,
get.
you're supposed to question the person.
Exactly.
Now you
You
go
question the
No, but
person.
that's the thing. You are actually having
you spend
conversation.
time. You
What?
can
I'm gonna
go
ask you
out.
before
Even in
marriage,
the
are you
halal way.
honest, brother? Are you honest?
No, you don't say,
No,
"Oh,
no,
are you
no,
honest?"
no.
You put them
You
through
watch-
a
You're
gonna
scenario
know-
to see if they'll
Yeah,
be
safe,
honest
safe,
or
safe,
not.
Safe, safe. Say for example,
Certain
if you are,
things.
sorry, sister.
yeah.
If you are actually looking for someone and actually visiting their homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You actually sit down, spend hours speaking to them. So it's like you get them through a process of
Yeah, you
getting
got
to know- no,
Q&A answers
No,
and people.
No,
get
no, no.
back.
It's
not
not
really
about that. Let me,
Q&A.
let me give you an
Yeah, go
example.
on.
Yeah, I was once in a house where I was told to sit there because a guy is going to come and propose to a girl. Yeah, the entire family, husband, wife, 4 children, all walked into the house, up the stairs, into the living room with their shoes on, without taking it off.
So what's the big deal there?
There was no conversation, but I could immediately tell, whoa, they've all got their shoes on. I put my forehead right there to pray.
Yeah.
There are certain things you could just see.
Etiquette.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for me personally, hygiene
Yes.
and manners, respect
But in
to
an
the
Arab
place.
family, that is you would always take your shoes off. Like
was a
for me,
huge
it's not.
aib,
For
huge
other
aib, of
people,
course.
exactly. For other people, it'd be
for
like,
Arab
so
families,
what?
Yeah, so other cultures, they don't care that much.
So
Exactly.
these were
Yeah.
Arabs. So, for
then
me,
you're
it
in
was
your
like,
own pool, and you will also
For
understand
white
that.
people, never. Like, where am I going to
Yeah,
take
I
my shoes
wasn't
off?
there. Why am I gonna watch some white people,
£1,000
like-
shoes on? I don't want to take them
Well,
off.
that's
no,
what
no,
I'm
no. This is
saying.
different. This is
Yeah.
different. These were Arabs. So for me, I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is a place where
We
we,
will
we,
never
we,
have
we
the
worship
things
right
you
here.
have
Yeah.
standards.
So there are things like for me,
Exactly.
like respect levels of should be extremely high.
There's so many
Yeah.
things you can figure out by watching people, how they move, where they go first, what they do. If a man even gives you way, if a man's considering you. There's certain things without question. There's non-verbal communication most of the
Yeah.
time.
So we don't have to
communication
enter
is not
haram.
just verbal.
Yeah.
It's so many other things. There's another thing that I learned that people want to receive in communication in an emotional way, in a logical way. There's so many different types of communication that needs to be broken down. So people don't even understand what communication
How they
actually
treat
means.
people, yeah. How they treat their relatives.
So this is going to be an eye opener for you because these are a lot of things that people don't understand. They'll be like, you know what? Before I actually get married, let me speak to someone who is actually understanding of what it entails to be in a marriage, and also people that say, well,
But they're going to
divorce-
give textbook answers. What are they going to say? Oh, I know what it is. I've read my little course now as well. I'll give you A, B, and C. Oh, yes.
no.
She ticks the boxes.
It's not like
It is
that.
going to be
It's
like
not
that.
like
I know
it
exactly
isn't
what
like
I'm
Like
talking
we
that.
said,
about.
it's not things you
like
ask
that.
someone.
You don't
You're going to
ask.
ask Q&As. That's what you're saying.
Certain things maybe, but then you discover yourself and the other person, and you put yourself in scenarios and situations that makes you think. That's just
You're
life,
going to
and that's
discover
every
after
day.
marriage a lot of the stuff. When you
You
travel
do
and things
discover
like that, yeah.
most of things after marriage, yes.
But you
But
can
before
also
that-
pre-plan
Yeah.
certain things
you-
that may occur and may not occur. Just like how, if I was to ask you, if your best friend betrayed you, how was your reaction? Are you going to be forgiving? What's it going to be like? How are you going to act? That's another character kind of, understanding of how you are. And if you are treating your best friend that way, your family, your parents, your mom, what am I going to be in that sort of scenario if one day I upset you and didn't do certain things? That's the kind of thing we need to understand. You just want to be resistant, but that's fine.
No, it's not about being
I
resistant.
want to move
think-
on. I want to move on. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to move on. So I'm trying to go through the timeline, and okay, so we've now moved to the stage where a couple are talking. Yeah, so that's where we are at now. A big discussion, a big debate that we had amongst each other is household bills, expenses. What happens there? I come from a very traditional family. My mum, I think she only learned how to withdraw money from a cash machine like 2 years ago. My dad's completely taking care of her. She has never paid for anything, and she would have no idea of even how to even start to or even fathom the idea of covering things or
Quite
an
normal,
EDF energy bill or something. So that's where I've come from, where I personally believe that the man should fix up, step up, give the woman her full right, that Allah has given her that right. So who are you to take that away from her and completely take care of the woman? But then we had a bit of back and forth, and Saif, would you like to paint your picture as well? And then we could get, rather than, 3 guys talking apparently nonsense about what women should do, we'll get the actual woman who's an expert to give the answer. So you could give your...
So I started off because of the situation that we're in now, and you explained this as well, where there has to be a lot of compromise. For women especially who are now overachieved and they are getting a lot of the better jobs, they're earning a lot of money. And they are refusing as well to do the traditional mother or the wife role of cooking and cleaning and things like that because, okay, they've done 5 years of studies, they want to make use of it and they want to add value to society and themselves.
Or they're
or whatever.
working and they can't.
So now they're making money. They're stacking up 30, 40, 50, 60, 100,000 pounds. They're keeping that just for themselves. Whilst the man, now we've also said, and we were all putting down men in this generation are doing poorly compared to women. In that scenario, the woman can add to the contribution on the household bills and they can agree to that beforehand. It's not a force. It's not saying, listen, woman, you're getting married to me, you have to pay up. Not that sort of situation. Woman, I'm a good man. I've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know you want all of that, all right? You can't find it. I've got it, but I'm struggling financially, right? And you have that angle where you're making a lot. what are you going to do? They're going to come to some. The reality is they may come to some agreement, and that's how it should be, I suppose. If everybody's supposed to come off, being single, because at the end of the day, Islamically, marriage is better than being single, right? So, yeah, that's my take.
I'll say my approach is more for the younger brothers, which are trying to get married and be in a halal relationship.
The halal relationship, bro. Exactly, because most of them.
My advice to them is, cover everything to the best you can, and there shouldn't be an issue if the sister wants to contribute to the household bills, for her to contribute and help out, right? But as a brother, you should be able to cover everything to the best of your abilities. And then hopefully, once they get married, there will be barakah in the rizq, and the guy will be able to take over everything.
So you'll say long term, the guy
Long
eventually
term,
takes
eventually take. But that's
Okay.
more for the younger brothers. Anyone above
No,
30, if you are lacking, sorry.
No, there's
Yeah.
no excuse for that.
There's no
Over
excuse for
30.
that.
Yeah,
But brothers that are in their 20s, that are trying to be in a halal
Yeah.
relationship,
Yeah.
brother, get
It's
married,
circumstantial,
yeah,
bro, as well.
figure it out. But then if the sister is working, there shouldn't be an issue for the sister to contribute, help out before there's any kids. Then hopefully, the brother takes over.
Well, I'll come
Yeah.
back to what I said before. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, when you are from a certain background and social economic class, then it will matter accordingly. Some people will be happy for that. I think it's circumstantial.
Yeah.
Where, they're willing, regardless of age and stage, to be honest,
Yeah.
where they'll be willing to put it in or not. And I think even if a man is actually taking that full control, a woman should always be aware of how things work, regardless, because whether there's illness, whether there's sort of lack of finances, whether there's redundancy or anything like that, so she should always be aware. It's not about, taking over and then she should be completely clueless. I think we're past that stage now where we need to be like that. And I've seen so many scenarios where women have struggled because they're all Islamic to begin with, but as soon as there's a divorce, even that Islamic, right of giving her mahar or giving her time to even, sort herself out financially is not given, and then she's stuck. So let's be real. She
Okay.
needs to understand and needs to know. But I think when it comes to finances, if they both agree and the families are happy, that's a case-by-case thing. And again, if she's always been kept by her parents, she'd want to be kept by her man, whether she has money or not.
Yeah, that's true.
And she needs to
Reality is, I would say,
Yeah.
over 90% of women will follow those traditional values. But there will always be scenarios where they will have some compromise and things like that.
But that was a very
Absolutely.
general response. That was a very professional response. What's you as Fahima,
Diplomatic.
the personal individual? What's your opinion?
What's my opinion?
Yeah.
Again, it depends on the situation. If I really love someone and wanted to be with them, and if the finance was the one thing that was the only thing that's the problem, then I wouldn't be unhappy to sort of be the one that's putting more into the pot as a whole, as long as I know that they are working towards something and it's just a temporary measure,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay.
That's how I would say, because we all have to carry each other at
Yeah,
some point.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes one is going to be lacking that balance than the other. And
Yeah.
that's how I would look at it. It's just a normal human thing to do.
Mm.
Because it's like in a family, when someone's ill, someone else carries the weight and the other one doesn't.
So you're
It's
going
not
to
a
values
constant
like
thing.
compromise and compassion.
Yeah, 100%. But it's not just about that. Come on. It's the reality of human being and nature.
yeah.
That's how you have to be.
Yeah.
But if also, I know for a man that generally speaking, they lose themselves when they know that their wife is constantly picking up the pieces or constantly doing that. It just bugs. I understand
your journey
what a
as a man
thinks.
should actually be.
See, women don't understand how men think. They're like, I'm helping, but he doesn't feel satisfied. His ego goes down, and eventually, even she loses respect for him
that
to a
is
certain
100%.
point.
Wasn't this what I was saying?
It's a natural, innate thing that we cannot
But then that goes
do.
back to the core values of the woman. If the woman has a good heart, she wouldn't do that.
Bro, there is an
No,
inevitability.
there's not just about a good heart.
She
It's
said,
the innate
she said temporary,
way
by the
of
way.
also how a woman is respectful towards a man because they are standing straight. They're standing tall.
Yeah.
Do you understand? He might have a dip and a sort of, a shake. But if he's going to be constantly down and constantly, can I borrow this? Can I do that? Like, come on.
Inevitably, she would lose respect.
Yes.
100%.
And then
This is what I was saying.
that creates problems in the marriage as well.
And then when there was a scenario, we were talking, we were back and forth. It got quite heated where Saif was saying that even if she is 100% taking care of him and he's not working, she should still respect that he's the man of the house and he is still the full decision maker. And
Yeah,
and-
that's from the
Wait,
Islamic
wait,
point
wait,
of
wait,
view.
have
wait.
to
But
understand
then,
how human
no,
behavior
yeah,
is.
exactly. But then Yahya said, but at that point, she might as well be the man don't expect her to still follow every single thing he's going to say, because she's dropped her right for him, and he wants to hold his right and be like, I'm still the decision maker, you do this, you do that, blah, blah,
Exactly.
and dictate, but
No,
you're
we're given
providing
a
nothing.
special circumstance where probably he's ill and redundant. We're not talking about a guy, an extreme example of a guy being a bum all his life, doing nothing.
No, we're
having
just talking about a
ambition.
man who's
And
relying
saying,
on a woman to carry him.
pay. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
But in that
circumstances-
scenario,
Yeah.
does he have full say and full authority?
Islamically, if a woman pays for the whole masjid to be built, does she become the imam?
It's not
No.
the same.
Right, it is the same. The leadership isn't based on just finances, bro. Leadership
That's a
is
poor example.
that's a very brilliant example.
Because a
But
woman
there's
can
a
never
lot
be
of
the imam.
factors that make you a leader. There's a lot of factors that brings you up to a certain status and a certain way of, holding that kind of leadership role. No, anyone can just be a leader anyway. And as much as we even say Islamically, at the end of the day, human mind and behavior is what I am been trained in the last 10 years to understand, is that unfortunately, even with faith, when we are put in certain scenarios for a certain amount of time, we do change, adapt accordingly, rightly or wrongly. That's how it is. So that's why I'm saying we need to understand how the human mind and body works. And that's how it is. How our brain is wired is also something different between men and women.
So let's say there are some real gems out there, right, who they contribute, let's say 50% to household bills, rent, bills, whatever, and they still give full authority, full decision making to their husband, and they have full respect towards that person. Do you think if for the next 10, 20 years she's still contributing 50%, do you think that respect would still stay that way?
Yes, because if they're professionals working, then they have, respect for each other, because it's like, a contribution
So
from both
unprofessionals
sides.
won't have that same level of respect.
Sometimes not, actually. Actually, no. Because
Okay.
there's a higher level of understanding as to what someone's bringing to the table. I think it really does make a difference. It really does. Because then you're not working and worrying about menial things that everyone else is arguing about. It does take that education. It does take wisdom. It does take that difference of compromise, because, you valuing someone for what they're bringing, which is, different aspects. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think nowadays, even another point quickly is the fact that there are less traditional women out there. I still see myself as very old school, regardless. I want the man to hold that kind of leadership role. I do want to be told.
I think most women do want that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of us do. But then you do find these ones are like, no, you find these kind of like husbands that are like, holding the tray and bringing it out. Yeah, to help, fair enough. But if that's your role, I'm sorry, that's just not attractive to me personally. Do you understand? I want you to be like a man. You understand? And a lot of women want that.
Wait, sorry,
For
what
the
was
new generation.
What was the tray example?
Well, it's a lot of the times it's like, yes, the man should help around the house and they should do certain things. But if I'm sitting there with my family, I will automatically be the one expected to be like, doing certain things instead of, him, the one that's running around doing certain things. He can help me. He can do certain things, but he's not the one that's going to be, I'm not going to just sit there gossiping away while he's in the kitchen, for example. Do you understand? Maybe if there's a barbecue, that's a man thing that would do. I wouldn't personally want to do a barbecue. I'm just very old school like that.
Yeah,
Do you understand? That's how it is. Not everyone agrees with it. But that's where I feel that, but women don't understand what men think and what they are like. And they do have to have a certain amount of finance, status, money, car, looking in a certain way to also feel a certain way. I think it really does come down to that.
Okay. On the topic of house chores, in your opinion, what are the limits of how far a man should go in helping out with house chores?
Again, it's circumstantial if they're both
Okay, so let's give the
working.
circumstance of both of them are working full time. There's no children yet.
I still personally will do more of it than generally the other person. That's what I said. I'm quite old
Mashallah.
school. I genuinely will, because
Yeah.
I'm really good at organizing,
you're a
managing.
dying breed.
I do things. I am actually.
Yeah.
I am one of a kind, and it is dying. But to be honest, that's how I look at it. I'd want to, because I think the woman actually creates that home.
Yeah.
They bring that environment.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
sisters
If it
are
weren't
like
for
that
my wife,
nowadays.
there'll be no home. I'm
No,
telling
but
you.
that's-
It'll
They
just be a
might
house.
do
No,
it, but they
there's a
don't
lot
know
of
how to
sisters-
cope. The reason why they don't, I can do so much. People won't realize when I leave the house, I look like I haven't actually cleaned, cooked, sorted out everything, done the shopping, I can do 100 things. Women nowadays, they can barely, look after kids.
No, but a lot of sisters
Yeah, so
would
I was-
actually do that It's just that they
I think
do
you'll
not
be
get the
offending a
support
lot of
that
the
they
women
need.
online now.
I don't care. I don't even look like I've done what I've done. And people half my age can't even do what I do today.
True.
So I'm only talking because I know what value I bring to the table.
Okay, so now the scenario of a woman that has children, she's not working, and the husband is a full-time breadwinner.
I was one of those.
How much
I
chores
did
in the house
everything.
should he do?
I did everything. He was like a king in the house that walked in and walked out and didn't have to lift a finger. And that's how I was raised. And I had absolutely no
Mashallah.
problem with that, you
Mashallah.
know? And that's how it was, you know? So for me, I don't have a problem with that. I
And
know
you were
my
still
role.
working at that point?
I wasn't working. And if I
She
was
was
to work,
working,
and if
greatest
I was
job in
to
the
work,
world, a full-time
and if I
housewife.
was to work,
Relax your
even,
hair.
No, I'm
even
talking
if,
about.
I'm joking, I'm joking.
well, if I was to work, I would still be majority of the
household,
time
yeah.
taking that. I would feel that's my role is in the house.
Got it.
You know, I want him to be served. I want him to be looked after. I want him to be that way, and I'd get things in return in other ways. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what people don't understand. It's not about equality. It's about knowing your role, knowing your responsibility is different between men and women,
Yeah,
and that's what makes you a woman, and that's what makes you a man,
True.
interesting.
and that's attractive.
Yeah, it's interesting how you say you got what you want in other ways.
Yes.
I read somewhere, and I fully agree, that if a woman really truly wants if she really wants something, she really wants to get exactly what she wants from her husband, being feminine
Yeah.
and respecting him and taking things off his shoulders and taking them on herself. At
But
home.
let's just say, because everyone's going to like, oh, but she's divorced now. No, I'm not going to go too much into my private details, but people do know me, and I have spoken to her properly. It's because he stepped out of his marriage contract, and that's why it ended.
Okay.
So that's how it was in my situation, unfortunately. So that's how, for me, even though I tried my best to be the traditional wife, to even work or do everything, you just don't know until the other person is not willing to meet you halfway or fulfill his way and his rights. So when that was broken from his side, that's when the marriage broke. So that's how it was in my case. In case anyone is going to come for me, they're going to come for me anyway. But let's just get that clear.
Yeah, they always do.
Yeah,
No, I
exactly.
appreciate that. I understand you know, you don't have to mention it, but you.
Yeah.
So highly appreciate the fact that you opened up about that. Okay, I actually said something that a little clip of it went online, and it went a little bit crazy of the comments. So I was saying that I had a friend who is working full time. His wife gave birth, and he told me that he was going to wake up every morning at 3 or 4 a.m. to defrost a bottle of milk from the freezer, feed the baby, burp the baby, change the baby, and then go to sleep, and then 2 hours later wake up for work. And I was like, that's crazy. You're doing too much, right? Now, he could absolutely come back from work, take over, take the child, take the baby, let his wife rest. But I just feel like if a man is going to wake up at 7 a.m. to go to work, to then expect him to go and wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. to do all of that,
Yeah.
I personally feel like he's going to burn out eventually, and you
Absolutely.
need one of the parents to be at 100%
Yeah.
energy. So I'll give an example. When my wife gave birth the first time, I slept overnight with her in the hospital on the floor, the most uncomfortable sleep ever, surrounded by crying babies, being woken up a couple of hours later with the nurse, with us not knowing how to change our baby, and then a nurse helping. Long story short, in the morning, I'm shattered. I can't function.
Yeah,
She
so-
can't function.
Exactly. It doesn't help each other. You
Doesn't
have
help.
to-
Second child, my wife actually said to me, go and sleep, go home, get a full 8 hours sleep, come back to you in the morning
Yeah,
when
so you
I'm
can
finished,
alternate, yeah.
and then take care of us. And so that's how I see it. It's not about
It
me being
depends.
selfish.
I mean, certain men, they can be really hands-on. They're really excited for their first child. They will probably put all of, their eggs in one
Yeah,
basket.
in the
at
first
that
one, that's what I
point.
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Slept on the floor.
Again, if you have a really good relationship and compromise and understand each other, you'll have one or the other telling them, you know what, like how your wife did, to say, go sleep, don't do it like this, whatever. And then there's other people that'll be really keen, and you let them go through it and realize, actually, I cannot do this for more than 1 or 2 nights, and the reality is like that.
Yep.
So I think in those sort of circumstances, it's not really too much to sort of discuss. But I think when women expect, oh, well, I'm getting up, so he needs to get up. And I'm like, well, he's working and you're not. I'm sorry. You should be able to be able to manage your children, because I certainly did.
Yeah.
I've got 2 young boys, and I never let my husband at the time when I was married to wake up when he was going for work. And even when he had the weekend, I'm like, well, you need to rest as well because you had that. And maybe I'm a bit too much, but still, I just felt that, you know, that wasn't his role. And he helped him when he wanted and when he could. And I was quite happy to do majority of the house, the cooking, the cleaning, whatever. But then at the same time, there was a point where I couldn't manage, and I did have a cleaner. I did have someone to help me to run the house, and he was happy to financially back that up. So like I said, you know, that's the kind of
And
thing
there's no
that
shame
needs
in
to
that.
be. Absolutely not. And I have one now too,
Yeah.
because I'm a single mom, and I work a lot to manage what I need to manage. And I'm raising 2 young boys, and I'm raising them to be men who can do certain things in the house, but not be seen as someone to do it as their main role, because that is not their main role.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
And that's how it is.
You're onto something there, MashaAllah. Well done. Well done. Yes.
No, on that one, I read some of the comments on it as well, and a lot of the people were saying that, you know, if the guy wants to do it, let him do it. Number one, if he's got the ability, because some people have more ability than others,
Exactly.
physical ability. Some of them only need 1 hour sleep and be Superman for the rest of the
but
day,
come on,
right?
come on. He
And
might not know what's
also-
best for him. An hour's sleep. Let's go.
God, who are we to dictate what's best for him if he can do it, right?
Oh, we can give advice. And
Okay,
I
but-
think my advice of telling
so-
him he'll burn out is valid.
But then on top of that,
Is it just making
she's
you
just
look
come out
bad?
of pregnancy, bro.
I do
And
nothing.
if she's going through the pains of after labor and things like that, it might make some sense to, you know, give her some space to recover.
Give her space to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but for how
take
long?
on more.
But
I don't know.
think, you
That's
what,
dependent
in
on
Muslim
them.
families-
Circumstantial, like
in
you
Muslim
said.
families, like my whole family was involved. I have a very, you know, hands-on family. My mom, my sister, my cousins, my, you know, all of them. So I didn't have to worry about taking care so much, whether it's in labor, birth, certain cultures.
Yeah,
you
you
know,
had that
backgrounds.
village.
We have that, you know,
Yeah.
But
exactly.
traditionally, they
It's
normally
traditionally-
spend time with their family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first
Exactly.
40 days, I think. So
Yeah, so that also works, I think, in our sense. And I just know what to do. I'm really, you know, so organized, so hands-on. I know how to take care. I can manage 10 things at once. And, you know, when I go away, when I do anything, like I said, if I come out of here, and you'll never know that I've done 10 things before, you know, and then coming out looking like I didn't. And no one would think that I'm a single mom, you know, had so much things that I've done, whatever it is. Some women can hold it together. I think the problem is women are not actually managing to hold one thing, let alone marriage and a household. They're not taught. And men are not taught to be those kind of like, you know, responsibilities that they need to bring into the family.
Yeah.
And women are not taught. And regardless, it's not just, oh, why should I cook? It's a skill. It is a good skill.
Everyone should have
and
it.
Everyone should
Men-
have
men
it.
should have
and
that
if
skill
I
as
could
well,
do
yeah.
it, why not? If
Yeah.
I can do it quicker, better, and do everything else, why not?
Yeah. And you want to really win him over, you know, cook for him.
Well,
Honestly.
coming out of my hands, it's going to taste even better anyway.
Salam.
There we go. There we go. Okay, so I want to move on because we're approaching the end. What kind of standout bits of advice could you give for a couple to maintain their marriage? Do you think couples therapy is for everyone? Do you think those who aren't even going through any problems should still do couples therapy to strengthen their relationship? What kind of stuff? What kind of advice would you give?
I just think you have to question yourself if you're tolerating. If you're tolerating, then you need to obviously think, why am I tolerating anything? And if you're tolerating, then eventually that can spill over. And a lot of people go to see these kind of counselors or speak to anyone, for example, and address their issues when it's really late and it's really at the end, when it's one string and it's a lot harder
breaking
to
point.
bring back. When we're at the beginning, when you know there's a little bit of irritation, a little bit of uncomfortableness and annoyance, that's when you need to speak and get it done, where you still have love and mercy for each other, a little bit more than the resentment and the hate towards the end. And I think it is for everyone. So you got to think, is this really worth it? Because your marriage really does make your life, your happiness. You know, you can be in prison at home or you can be in heaven, depending on what kind of relationship you actually live by. I know people that are living in absolute hell, and it's not a sanctuary because of the person that they've chosen to marry. Okay, so yes, it is worth investing. It is worth, you know, realizing that if it's something that I'm just tolerating, it's not really good for me. I need to make some sort of change here. You're not going to have another outcome with the same thing that you do constantly over and over again, the same way as you would in business. You got to change things up. And if it means talking to somebody, if it means getting a bit of advice, exploring, getting a bit of wisdom, looking at things from a different perspective, adding that mix to your family so that it can thrive better. And I think the household is the most important thing. I work with families to build homes because that's what society is strong. And that's why the Muslims are feared, because our households are meant to be strong. And we are letting ourselves down if we let that down. And that filters into society, community, and the rest. And that's what it is.
Did you get therapy yourself when you were going through your marriage
No,
problems?
I didn't. I had a really good marriage, I'm not going to lie. I had everything that I wanted. It's just unfortunately one relapse from my ex-husband, and that's what ended it. So after that, I started doing things.
So do you think if you had therapy during that time, your marriage would have lasted?
You know what? You can't help people if they want to check out. Okay? And if they want to check out, they're going to check out whichever way. So it just is what it is. Maybe if there was therapy, I think it could have probably been saved. Absolutely. But then some people are just like, they think the grass is greener and they're still looking 10 years later.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And one of the things that you mentioned a few times about the miserable marriage, and people are in a marriage which is very difficult. But one thing we have to point out in life, we don't always have a consistency in happiness. Marriages is going to have
No, I don't
up
mean
and
that.
downs.
I mean you have to work at it
like
when
the next
you are
marriage
in that.
isn't. There's no guarantee the
No,
next
there
marriage is going
isn't.
to be
There's
perfect
always going to
and
be
happy,
something,
yeah?
100%.
There's
But
people
what
that
I
have been
mean
divorced
is
5 times.
you're staying in that marriage without making it better. That's the difference. Okay? You're staying
you're
in it
not
and just
working on it.
tolerating. You're not working at it. There's a difference. Everything can be saved unless it's extreme. But even in those extreme cases I have worked with where there has got some sort of, comeback. If that person has addiction, then they go through that kind of therapy. They go through that kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, so my voice is going.
No, you're fine. Okay, I have a question. What do you say to those that say we're only in the marriage just for the children?
That is a cop out.
Because that's
That
a
is a
cop-out.
cop out, definitely.
That's
because
very common.
People really don't understand that your children, they sort of, if you understand the psychology of how children develop and what they sense without you even showing and telling them, then you would want to make sure that you don't just stay in there for the children, you stay in there for that partner and you make that thing work.
But sometimes the children
That
coming
is-
into the marriage actually develops the marriage and makes the bond stronger between the partners.
How?
It does.
If you
You have
you
love for each
use
other
that
because
as an
you have-
excuse to stay together, but without doing any work to actually
improve your
love that
relationship,
partner, you're going to continue in a very toxic relationship, which is going to affect that child who's going to think certain things that are acceptable, and it's going to continue in a generational cycle.
Yeah, even if you just avoid each other and just don't
Yes.
show you're not abusing one another, but you're just not showing each other
you know,
any
I
love.
have- yeah.
You're not that child's gonna grow up being like, so that's how I should treat my wife.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's how I should
They
treat my
watch
husband.
you, they mimic you.
Everything
People
you
don't
do.
understand. I have coached children. Parents have come to me to help their children, and that's why I know this. And they will tell me things that their parents are completely oblivious of, yet they're sitting with them at home every single day and they don't understand what is going through that child's mind. So you got to understand. Another thing is parenting, which is so important to discuss, which I talk a lot about, because people don't understand how children develop. You understand the development of a child's brain, you will change the fact that you will use them as an excuse. And you will change yourself for them. You don't stay in that marriage for that children. You change yourself, you better yourself for that child. That's the difference that you have to make. And there's a difference there as you were being a person.
That's a great point. That's a great
Good
point.
advice, yeah.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much. We definitely need to get you on again
100%.
to talk about the parenting as well. But before we wrap up, I didn't want to talk about this, but a few weeks ago when I spoke to you, but the saga has continued with Mohamed Hijab, and I just wanted, from a female perspective, what are your, just to quickly summarize it in a few minutes, I mean, what are your views on it? Do you agree with the sister coming out in public? I'm not even going to ask any more questions. Just what are your views on what's happened?
Some people was like, oh, of course, she should come out in public to warn everyone else. There's always going to be one person, regardless if they know, that's going to fall for this. Coming out in public does not help anyone. Certainly not her case at all. I'm sorry. I'm very strong on this. It's only going to give gossip and for people like you and me to talk about in content. But you actually want to work something out, You do it with the parties that are involved in private. I don't care if it's right or wrong. I don't care even if he's wrong. He probably is. That's not the point. The point is,
Well, he's denied the whole thing took place.
regardless, I think you have to do this, because at the end of the day, when you want to resolve something and you go into court or you go into anywhere, it doesn't have to be public. Public, what is there? Is someone there going to come and say, yeah, I'm going to give you some money, or I'm going to, help your scenario? I don't understand. For me, if I was to do something, there's always has to be a return on investment. What is that return then? What is that? What is the point of that? You're not telling
It's true.
someone.
She's not benefiting at all
And
by
if you
doing
think
this.
you're
She
telling,
just wants to burn
and
him.
if you think that you're calling and outing him, that's not how it works either. Whatever he's done, private or not, you're just delaying the karma of that person, because you're making it private where everyone else is putting their opinion on him, which they shouldn't be doing. And in a way, it's taken away the sin as well, if there was any.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You were on a podcast with what's her name? The Niqabi sister, the Muslim mum.
Oh, right,
The
yes.
You made a very good point. You said if of course we're basing it on what the woman has come out and said, if we're judging her by what she said is true, you said if it started in private or in secret, it should have ended that way, and it shouldn't have gone to the public space. So
Definitely. I wish you spoke to somebody professional.
Well, apparently she
because-
spoke to like the European Council of Islamic Council of Europe, which is they're a big.
I don't
scholarly
understand
body.
that, because if there were professional councils, they're not all going to be, competent, okay? And I always think that even therapists and counselors, they get a bad sort of rap for a lot of things, because there is a lack of competency in any job. Okay, it doesn't mean that they are a counselor, they're competent. And clearly in this case, there wasn't any competence. And I don't know how far she went with the counseling. Did she just have one session? You don't just have one session and you just get rid of it. Maybe she didn't like what she heard and then she went public. It depends. We don't know the details. I know when people go through healing and go through things, it takes weeks, months, if not years, to understand, to heal, to also know that you are also accountable for some of your own sort of actions and playing part in it to a certain extent. And then also accepting that the other person is who they are and you cannot correct that wrong from the other person. You just have to now work on yourself and heal yourself. But that just comes to me as someone who is resentful, who is scorned, who is angry, that even if you're right, unfortunately, you're not actually resolving your actual scenario and your case. You're just giving content to everyone else.
Do you feel like she wasn't holding herself accountable?
She may as well be. And I
for
think it's
her
acting
actions.
out of anger. It's like me drinking poison, wishing that you would die. That's the kind of thing that she was doing. It doesn't work that way. I don't know anyone that deals with something and comes out of something if it's going to be public in that way. Even if you are an A-list celebrity, unless it's like, what's his name from Pirates of the Caribbean,
Johnny
who
Depp.
had that,
Johnny Depp.
exactly, who had that case. It only went public because he had to go into trial.
Yeah.
But the actual healing of two people to make things right is in counsel, is in mentorship, privately, where you can really discuss things. This was just trying to bring someone down out of anger,
Yeah, I agree.
a scorned woman who has every right, because I know that pain. But that's not the way to go about it. She could have got a lot more result and, probably resolving things, and actually him having accountability more if it was done correctly, I feel.
Okay.
Because now he's just going to go on the defense, and it's just her word against his and vice versa.
Yeah. Yes. Any thoughts? Anything to wrap it up with? No.
Whether or not you should have a
I'm actually-
temporary marriage or not is another one.
Was it temporary or was it secret?
Whichever it was, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, he's denied it. She's. Yeah. We don't actually want to go into whether or not what did he do or what did he do was right. It's actually about her bringing him out in public. I feel like if he wasn't a celebrity,
Of course.
this wouldn't be brought out in public.
Yeah, and it's your excuse to say, well, I just want to warn other people.
Yeah,
But in
yeah,
the end, you're not warning other one, because there'll be another one who sees him and still admires him and will still go
Yeah.
there if there was a chance. I've seen that happen so many times.
And-
You don't warn people. You're just showing your own anger and you're not resolving anything.
And what she's accused him of, this could happen this happens in monogamous marriages. This happens in
People don't
regular marriages.
yeah,
Some people just don't
break
fulfill their
promises.
goals. Yeah.
Exactly.
Some people just they make promises and they just
They
don't
don't
get
fulfill.
there. Women do it a lot. Men do it a lot.
Exactly.
It happens.
Exactly.
To bring
But
it out
she
in public,
entered
to
into
drag it.
But she entered into certain things from what she said when I think she didn't even secure herself first and went to the third, fourth, fifth
Yeah,
stage
yeah.
without even getting secured in the first and second stage
Yeah. So she agreed to something.
Yeah.
And then later on.
later on. That for me is what I do hold women accountable more because I think that we are higher in a lot of ways of emotional intelligence. So there is no excuse. And yes, we can be vulnerable and we can go with our emotions and feelings. But when you've got a child, I'm sorry, I put my kid first. That's why I'm still single because I'm not going to take any chances just for anyone, just because I have like, a feeling and I think they are, special because they're on TV or they're on a podcast and, they're all like, sort of like infallible. Come on.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. People get carried away with people that are of status as well. So, don't put them on a bloody pedestal.
Okay. And on that note,
That was amazing.
thank you so much, Fahima, for coming on. It was a great podcast. We actually have now got something that we give to our guests as a thank you gesture. So this is officially our new AAA Talks hoodies.
Thank you. That looks like my size as well.
Okay, yeah, hope so. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming on. I'll just hand it over to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's
Really
not folded.
appreciate-
But
No, that's fine.
but,
No, it's
we are men,
perfect.
and folding is alien to us.
Yeah, I'm going to do it properly now. See within a few seconds. So a lot
Okay,
better.
so guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. If there's anything that you agree with Sister Fahima, comment it below. If you disagree, comment it below. And we're on a road to 2,000 subscribers, so help us to get there, inshallah. And until then, we've been AAA Talks, signing out Muaz
Safe.
And Yahya.
and our guest.
Fahima.
And you could check her out at the socials that will be posted below. And if you're looking to get married to the right spouse, or you're looking to save your marriage,
Or you need some
or
counseling.
improve your marriage, or counseling, couples therapy,
Yeah.
Fahima is the one that you need to be
Definitely.
speaking to. Until then, Assalamu alaikum. Take care.